You know, I've seen it 100 times before. People like you, people who've been pushed to the edge, left to rot by the very ones they trusted most. It's a cycle, isn't it? They come into your life, sweet as sugar, promising the world. They make you feel seen, valued, needed. And for a while it feels real. It feels like maybe, just maybe, you found something genuine. But then the cracks start to show, the lies slip through the smile, the excuses pile up, and before you know it, you're left standing in the ruins of what was never real to begin with. You were the one who cared more. You were the one who gave more. That's why it hurt so much when they left. That's why it felt like your chest was caving in, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Because you poured every bit of yourself into those connections, those relationships. And they took what they needed and left you with the scraps. They left you with the silence. But here's the thing. Silence is where you found your voice. Silence is where you learn to speak for yourself, to listen to your own heartbeat instead of the noise of their lies. It's in the silence that you found your strength. And they didn't expect that, did they? They didn't think you'd rise from the ashes they left you in. They thought you'd stay broken, that you'd keep begging for their attention, their pity. But you proved them wrong. You showed them what happens when you embrace the solitude instead of fearing it. They didn't see it coming. The way you transformed, the way you took the pain they handed you and turned it into something else, something dangerous. You used it as fuel, as fire. Every time they ignored you, every time they let you down, it added another log to the flame. And now you're a wildfire they can't contain. They can't control you anymore because you've learned the truth about yourself in the dark places where they abandoned you. You've realized that you're not just a survivor. You're a warrior. You fought battles they'll never know, battles they'd run from if they were ever faced with the same. Because they're weak. They need the crowd, the validation, the constant chatter to drown out the emptiness inside. But you've embraced the emptiness. You've made it your ally. That's what solitude does. It strips away everything you thought you needed and leaves you with nothing but yourself. And at first, it feels like drowning, doesn't it? It feels like the darkness is going to swallow you whole. But then something incredible happens. You start to breathe deeper. You start to see clearer. You realize that the darkness isn't something to fear. It's something to master. You've become a master of your own darkness. And that scares them more than anything. Because they know they can't manipulate you anymore. They can't use your fears against you because you've faced them all head on. You've stared into the abyss of your own mind, and instead of flinching, You smiled back. You accepted it. You became it. They'll call you crazy. They'll say you've lost your way. But the truth is, you found a path they're too afraid to walk. You've embraced the parts of yourself they tried to shame you for. The anger, the sadness, the bitterness. You've taken it all in and made it part of who you are. And now, you're stronger for it. Because you're not hiding anymore. You're not pretending to be something you're not, just to make them comfortable. They want you to fit into their little box, to play the role they've assigned you. But you're done with that, aren't you? You're done playing by their rules. You've written your own rule book now. And the first rule? Never beg for anyone's presence. Never bend for anyone who wouldn't bend for you. You've learned that the hard way, and it's a lesson you won't forget. Look at them. Look at how they scramble to fill their emptiness with shallow relationships, meaningless distractions. They need it like a drug, because without it, they'd have to face the truth about themselves. They'd have to confront the fact that they're not as strong as they pretend to be. But you've taken the hit. You've faced the withdrawals, and now you're clean. You're free. You don't need the noise anymore. You don't need their hollow words of comfort, because solitude gave you something they could never offer: clarity. It showed you the truth about them, about the world, about yourself. And now you see everything differently. The veil has been lifted, and you can't go back to being blind. They'll try to lure you back in, of course. They'll try to use guilt, manipulation, fake kindness. They'll say things like, "We've missed you," or "We've been thinking about you." But you know better now. You can see through their words, see the desperation behind their eyes. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you that needed them. They miss the power they had over you. And isn't that the biggest joke of all? They thought they had you wrapped around their little finger. They thought you'd come crawling back, begging for scraps of their attention. But here you are, standing tall, unbroken, staring them down with a look that says, "I see you for what you really are." And they can't handle it. They can't handle the fact that you don't need them anymore, that you've moved on, evolved, become something greater. You've outgrown them. You've outgrown the lies, the games, the false promises. And that's why they'll never be able to touch you again. Because solitude taught you what their presence never could. It taught you self-respect. It taught you that your time, your energy, your heart are not things to be given away lightly. They're things to be valued, protected, cherished. And now that you've learned that lesson, you're untouchable. So what's next for you? Are you going to keep looking back, wondering what might have been? Or are you going to step forward into the life you were meant to live, without their shadows darkening your path. The choice is yours, and it's the only choice that matters now. Because you've survived the worst they could throw at you. You've walked through the fire, and you didn't just survive. You thrived. You came out the other side stronger, wiser, and ready to take on whatever comes next. And that's your power. That's your victory. Because solitude didn't break you, it built you. You want to know what the best part of this is? It's not just that you survived. It's not just that you came out the other side stronger. No. The best part is that now you see the world for what it truly is. A pit of masks, lies, and pretty little performances. You used to look at people and see potential, see goodness, but solitude stripped away those rose-colored glasses, didn't it? It forced you to see the truth. It made you see that most people are nothing more than hollow shells, pretending to be whole. They walk around playing their parts, smiling their fake smiles, speaking their empty words. And you used to be one of them, didn't you? You used to play along, hoping that maybe this time it would be real. Maybe this time they'd mean it. But now you see through the act. You see the cracks in their masks, the lies hiding in their eyes. You see their desperation, their need to be needed. And it makes you laugh, doesn't it? Because you don't need them anymore. You've outgrown that weakness. Look at you. You've become the thing they fear most. A person who can stand alone. A person who doesn't crumble under the weight of silence. They can't understand it, can they? They can't fathom how you're still standing, how you're still breathing without their validation, their attention. It eats them alive because they need it like oxygen. They need the noise, the chaos, the constant reminders that they matter. But you found your peace in the silence. You found your power in the emptiness they couldn't handle. They used to pity you. They used to look at you with those condescending eyes, whispering about how you were lonely, how you were lost. But the truth is, you were never lost. You were just searching, digging through the lies, cutting through the noise. And solitude, it was the only tool sharp enough to do the job. It carved away everything that wasn't real, leaving you with nothing but the raw, unfiltered truth. And now you see yourself clearly for the first time. You see the strength in your own reflection. You see the scars, yes, but you also see what they represent. Every battle you fought, every demon you faced. They thought the scars would make you weaker, that they'd be reminders of your pain. But instead, they're your armor. They're proof that you can bleed and still keep fighting. They're proof that you're not made of glass. You're made of iron. You know what they hate the most about you now? It's not just your strength. It's not just that you survived. without them. It's that you've become something they can never be, whole. You found a way to be complete on your own. You filled the void they left with something they'll never understand. You filled it with yourself. They need others to make them feel alive. They need the constant validation, the constant approval. They hop from one person to the next, sucking up attention like it's their lifeblood. But you learn to be your own source. You stopped looking outside for what was always inside you. And that's why they can't touch you anymore. That's why they can't manipulate you like they used to. Because you don't need them. You've become your own foundation, your own rock. They tried to tear you down, but all they did was clear the rubble. They thought they were breaking you, but they were just making room for something new, something stronger. They built the cage, but solitude gave you the key, and now you're free. Free from their expectations, free from their judgments, free from the need to prove yourself to anyone but yourself. That's real power. That's something they'll never understand. No matter how many people they surround themselves with, no matter how many compliments they fish for, they'll always be empty because they've never faced the silence. They've never looked themselves in the mirror without the noise, without the distractions. But you've stared into the abyss of your own soul and didn't flinch. You've seen your darkness, your flaws, your deepest fears, and you embraced them. You didn't run from them. You didn't try to cover them up with pretty lies. You became whole because you accepted every part of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly. You accepted the anger, the bitterness, the sadness. You made them part of who you are, and now you're untouchable because there's nothing left for them to use against you. They can't shame you. They can't guilt you because you've already faced it all. You've already forgiven yourself for every mistake, every failure, and that's what makes you invincible. They thought solitude was a punishment. They thought it would break you, but it turned out to be the greatest gift you could have ever received. It showed you the truth about them, about yourself, about the world. It taught you that the only person you need to rely on is standing right here, staring back at you in the mirror. And now you walk with a different kind of power. A quiet, lethal confidence that comes from knowing you've faced the worst and survived. You've been broken, but you didn't stay broken. You put yourself back together with your own two hands, piece by jagged piece. And now you're sharper, harder, unbreakable. Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them spread their little rumors, trying to drag you back down. It doesn't matter, because you've risen above it. You've transcended the petty games, the shallow lies. You found something real, yourself, and that's the one thing they can never take away from you. You thought you needed their presence, but solitude taught you otherwise. It showed you that you were enough all along. It made you realize that you don't need anyone's permission to be great. You don't need anyone's approval to be whole. You become your own light in the darkness, your own savior. And that's your revenge. That's your triumph. Because you've taken everything they tried to use against you and turned it into your greatest strength. They wanted you to stay small, stay broken, but now you're standing tall, unshakable. You found your power in the silence, in the solitude, and you're never going back. Go ahead, walk alone if you have to. Embrace the solitude. Because now, you're stronger than ever. Now, you know the truth. Solitude taught you what their presence never could. It taught you that you are everything you need. You see, they thought solitude would destroy you. They thought it would be the end of your story. But that's the funny thing about people like them. They never see the bigger picture. They only understand what's right in front of their faces. They thought they were leaving you in the dark. But what they didn't realize is that the darkness was where you found yourself. It was where you started to truly live. Oh, it wasn't easy, was it? No. It felt like dying at first. It felt like every part of you was being ripped apart, exposed to the cold, unforgiving silence. You were left alone with your thoughts, your regrets, your fears. It was like being trapped in a room with all the demons you'd been running from, and you couldn't escape. There was no one to save you, no one to distract you. It was just you, raw and exposed. But here's the thing. They underestimated you. They thought you'd crumble, that you'd fall apart without their approval, without their presence. They didn't think you had it in you to face the darkness head on. But you did. You stood your ground. You let the silence wash over you, suffocate you, until you had no choice but to breathe it in, to make it a part of you. And that's when the real transformation began. You started to see things clearly, didn't you? The lies you used to believe, the games you played along with, the false comfort you found in their empty words. It all started to dissolve. You realized that you'd been chasing shadows, clinging to people who were never really there. And in that moment of clarity, something inside you snapped. The old version of you shattered, and in its place, something new was born. Something harder, something stronger. They won't recognize you now. They won't know what to make of the person you've become, because you've shed your skin. You've let go of the need to fit into their world, to meet their expectations. You've stopped apologizing for being different, for wanting more than they could ever offer. And that's what terrifies them. They wanted you to stay the same. They needed you to be the version of yourself that was easy to manipulate, easy to control. But solitude taught you something they never could. It taught you who you really are. It made you face your own reflection without the filters, without the lies you told yourself to make their presence bearable. And it wasn't pretty, was it? It was messy, painful, raw, but it was real. For the first time, you saw yourself clearly. You saw the cracks, the flaws, the parts of you that you'd been hiding, even from yourself. And instead of running from it, you embraced it. You accepted it all. You made peace with your own demons, your own darkness. You stopped looking outside for someone to fix you because you realized you weren't broken. You were just unfinished. And now you're complete. Now you're whole. Because you took the time to put yourself back together, piece by piece, without relying on anyone else's hands. You did it yourself. And that kind of strength, it's rare. It's terrifying. It's the kind of strength that makes people uncomfortable because it's a mirror held up to their own weaknesses. Bravo. You've done what they never could. You faced the silence and came out the other side stronger. They need the noise to drown out their own thoughts, their own insecurities. But you've learned to sit in the silence, to let it speak to you. You've found your own voice in the void, and now it's louder than any of the voices that once tried to drown you out. Look at them. Look at how they scramble for validation, how they cling to each other like drowning rats. They surround themselves with people because they can't stand to be alone. They need the distraction, the noise, the constant stream of meaningless conversations to fill the emptiness inside. But that emptiness, it's their own making. It's the result of never facing their own demons, never confronting their own darkness. They've spent their entire lives running from themselves, and they hate you because you've done what they never could. You've become your own savior. You've found peace in your own company. You've become the kind of person who doesn't flinch in the face of loneliness, who doesn't break when the room goes quiet. And that kind of power, it's something they can't buy, can't fake, can't steal. It's earned through pain, through struggle, through nights spent staring into the abyss and daring it to stare back. You're not the same person you were before. You're not the person who begged for scraps of their attention, who twisted yourself into knots, trying to please people who never deserved you. You've grown past that. You've evolved. You've become someone who doesn't settle, who doesn't bend. And that's why they fear you now. Because you become untouchable. They can't hurt you anymore because you've taken away their power. You've stopped giving them a say in your life, stopped letting their opinions dictate your worth. You've taken back control. And now you walk with a different kind of confidence, a quiet, unshakable strength that comes from knowing you faced the worst and survived. Let them whisper. Let them judge. It doesn't matter anymore, because you found something they never will. Peace in your own solitude. Strength in your own silence. You've become your own fortress, your own sanctuary. And that's the real victory. Solitude taught you what their presence never could. It taught you that you are everything you need. It showed you that you're stronger alone than they ever were together. And now, you're ready to take on the world, not with their approval, but with your own power guiding the way. So go ahead, walk your path, embrace the silence, because now you know the truth. You've faced your own darkness, and you've come out stronger. You've become the master of your own fate, the ruler of your own kingdom. And that's the only power that truly matters. You know, there's a certain beauty in this, your transformation. They don't see it yet. They're too blinded by their own insecurities, their own shallow desires. But I see it. I see what you've become, and it's magnificent. You were once like them, soft, trusting, eager to please. You played the game, followed the rules, tried to fit into their little boxes. But solitude, it shattered those boxes. It burned the rule book. It freed you from the chains you didn't even realize you were wearing. They tried to make you feel like you were losing by being alone. They tried to make you believe that your solitude was a sign of failure, of weakness. But now you know the truth, don't you? You know that the solitude they feared was your greatest weapon. It was the crucible that forged you, the fire that hardened your resolve. While they were busy filling their lives with noise, with meaningless chatter, you were digging deep. You were doing the work they were too afraid to face. It's funny, really. They'll never admit it, but they envy you. They envy the strength you found in your own company. They envy the way you've become untethered, unbound by the need for their approval. They used to hold that over you, didn't they? They dangled their affection, their attention like a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach. They made you feel like you had to earn it, like you weren't worthy unless they said so. But not anymore. Now, you've taken that power back. Now, you're the one who decides your worth. You don't need their validation, their fake smiles, their hollow compliments. You've learned to validate yourself, to find strength in the silence they used to weaponize against you. They used to think of you as the weak one, the one who needed saving. But look at them now. Look at how they scramble for each other's attention, desperate for a moment of validation, a sliver of approval. They can't stand the thought of being alone, of being left with nothing but their own thoughts. But you've made peace with your own mind. You've turned the silence into your sanctuary, your place of power. They don't realize that the very thing they feared for you has become your greatest asset. Solitude was never your enemy. It was your ally. It stripped away the lies, the distractions, the false friendships. It forced you to confront your own reflection, to face the parts of yourself you'd buried under layers of denial and fear. And in doing so, it gave you something they'll never have: clarity. You see things now, don't you? You see the truth behind their words, the emptiness behind their promises. You see the fear in their eyes when they look at you now, because they know you're not the same person you used to be. You've grown beyond them. You've evolved. And that scares them more than anything. They can't control you anymore. They can't manipulate you with their fake affection, their shallow kindness. You've outgrown the need for their approval, their acceptance. You've become something they can't define, can't categorize. You've become unpredictable, uncontainable. And that's a power they'll never understand. Look at how far you've come. They left you to rot in the dark, thinking it would destroy you. They thought the silence would break you, that the loneliness would crush you. But instead, it made you stronger. It made you harder. It made you real. While they were busy clinging to their shallow comforts, you were finding your strength in the discomfort. You were building yourself up from the inside out, turning every ounce of pain into power. You've become a mirror now, a reflection of their own insecurities, their own fears. They look at you, and they see everything they're too afraid to confront in themselves. They see the parts of themselves they've been running from, hiding behind their smiles and their social masks. And that's why they try to tear you down, to drag you back into the darkness they left you in. Because your light blinds them. Your truth burns them. They'll never admit it. But they need you to be weak. They need you to be the person you used to be, the one who needed them, who begged for their presence, because that version of you made them feel strong, made them feel important. But now you flipped the script. Now, you're the one who holds the power. You're the one who decides who gets to stay in your life and who gets shown the door. This is your moment. This is your time to rise. Not because they say you can, but because you've decided you will. You've taken everything they threw at you, the lies, the betrayal, the abandonment, and you turned it into fuel. You let it burn inside you, stoking a fire they'll never be able to extinguish. You've learned that you don't need them. You've learned that the only approval you ever needed was your own. And now, you walk with a different kind of power, a quiet, lethal confidence that comes from knowing you've faced the worst and survived. You've stared into the abyss, and instead of falling into it, you made it your own. So what's next for you? Are you going to keep looking back, wondering what might have been? Or are you going to step forward into the life you were meant to live, without their shadows clouding your vision? You've already answered that question, haven't you? You've chosen yourself. You've chosen to walk alone, not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you've realized that the silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility, of potential. You've become everything they said you couldn't be. You've become your own hero, your own savior. You've become whole. And that's the greatest revenge of all. Not anger, not bitterness, but the simple, undeniable fact that you've risen above it all. That you found peace in the place they thought would destroy you. Solitude taught you what their presence never could. It taught you that you are enough, that you've always been enough. And now you walk your own path, with your head held high, knowing that the only person who needs to believe in you is staring back at you in the mirror. This is your victory. This is your freedom. You've taken the darkness they left you in and turned it into your own kingdom. And now you rule it with a strength they'll never understand. You've become everything they feared, and that's exactly who you were meant to be.